County Board of Adjustment, public hearing. Please stand and join us in pledge your flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, a few items we need to be covered before we get started. Sign in at the door. You've already done that. There you'll find a detailed handout of the step-by-step procedure that will follow tonight. If you wish, you can take one. Please put any electronic devices on silent mode at this time. Please note that all testimony is being recorded for the record. Members of the Board of Adjustment are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners, with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts. Land Services staff is here to assist the Board of Adjustment with its duties. The task of the Board of Adjustment is to consider requests for variances and appeals from an order, requirement, or decision made by a county zoning official in accordance with state law and county ordinance. Each request is considered on its own merit. The burden of proving a practical difficulty rests with the applicant. If a variance is granted, it is granted to the land, not to the landowner. There is a protocol for how we will proceed. Each variance request on the agenda we will hear a staff report. They will hear testimony from the applicant, and then the board will discuss and gather more information as needed. Next, I will ask if there's anyone in the audience wishing to speak to the request. I'll ask each party to come to the podium, state their name, address for the record, and give their testimony. Please be as factual as possible. Direct all questions and statements to me. After all testimony is complete, I'll close the public hearing part of the process. The board will then review and discuss the case in terms of our finding of fact criteria as required by Minnesota statutes and county ordinance. We will have a series of votes, discuss whether conditions be made, have a final motion to approve or deny the request based on those findings. After this final vote on your request, you may leave if you wish. So, would you please state your name for the record?
Okay. Lori Hintz.
Okay.
New owner of a cabin. I inherited my cabin 2 years ago. My grandparents built it. My parents improved it. I spent a lot of time up there, but nothing prepares you for actually owning it.
Yep, we'll hear the staff report and then we'll get some more testimony from you.
Oh, that was all you wanted, okay.
Yep. No, you're good. Lori Hens, 33537 East Shamana Drive, Motley. After the fact variance to continue a septic system to be within the setback of a protected wetland located in Scandia Township on Shamana Lake. The staff report then, Amy?
Yep, Mr. Chair, again, after the fact variance to continue the septic system. The ordinance reference for this request is 1301.34, and that requires a 75-foot setback from a protected wetland for a septic system. Here is a plat map of Scandia Valley Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here is the variance request received from the applicant. And then here's an aerial photograph of the property. And then just some other imagery of the property from different directions. And then here's a view from the lake. And this is, these are photographs taken at the viewing on the 8th of December. The property is in Section 15 of Scandia Valley Township, and it's on Shamana Lake, which is a general development lake. This is a non-conforming single lot. The property is 100 feet wide and 15,432 square feet. According to the assessor's records, the non-conforming dwelling was built in 1953. In 1991, 2 holding tanks were permitted for installation to serve the dwelling. I have in my records that in 2018, the failing tanks were replaced with 1 2-compartment holding tank, but at the viewing, the applicant said that that did not occur. In September 2023, the property owner's septic system installer, Mike Altrichter, requested an inspection following the install of a tank and mound drain field. The installer was informed that the Land Services Department did not have a design or permit on file for the system. Mr. Altrichter emailed a design to the office. Staff inspected the install and found the mound drain field did not meet setback from the protected wetland located across the street. And then here is the as-built drawing staff did. And then here's an aerial photograph with the wetland layer turned on. Septic systems must be 75 feet from protected wetlands. The drain field is 62 feet from the wetland, which is a 12-foot encroachment. An alternative location on the property is not possible for the drain field due to the location of water wells. The applicant is requesting an after-the-fact variance to keep the drain field in its installed location. The applicant did attend a development review team meeting, and here are the notes from that. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2, shoreland development, goal D1. The comprehensive water plan goals and objectives is a surface water goal, objective B, land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 68 notices were sent for this request and no comment was received prior to the hearing. And then here you're finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And for the record, December 8th, last Friday at 1 p.m., the four of us and Amy were, along with the applicant, at the viewing, and Mr. Altrichter was there also. So, is there anything you'd like to add to the report?
As you noted, the 2018 work didn't get done, and I'm not sure how that
You
got
might
in the
have to
record.
pull the mic closer to you so it
Okay.
records well.
Okay, as you noted, the 2018 work didn't happen. I'm guessing I and my dad were up that summer talking to a contractor about getting the tanks replaced, but nothing ever happened. So maybe something was filed, but it didn't happen. So what I replaced was the two old tanks from 1991. One of them was leaking, and when we excavated, it looked like when they shot the fiber optic cable in, it hit the corner of the tank, and that's what damaged that one. So we closed that one off, and I've been using the one holding tank since then. I am hoping to move up here eventually, and so I wanted to get a drain field / mound system. I understand that replacing a holding tank in that area, it's too small to make it a year-round dwelling. So I would need to get a drain field to make it livable year-round. So that was kind of my purpose, as well as getting the septic system fixed so it wasn't leaking anymore.
Okay.
And I didn't do it on purpose. I understand the reason for codes. I worked in the environmental field for the last 33 years, and I appreciate the reason for the codes. And I'm a good landowner. I grew up at that property, and I want to take good care of it. So there was no trying to get you by on something. I know now that you get a copy of the permit before you let your contractor dig. Hard lesson, but now I know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions for the applicant, staff?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Brent.
maybe this is a question for Amy, but was the installer also a designer approved by the county?
Yes, so Mr. Altrichter is a licensed designer and an installer. So he had the licensure to do both of those steps.
Do we know why there wasn't a permit pulled
Good question.
or a design plan submitted?
I think he got ahead of himself. I don't have, it would be a question for Mr. Altrichter as to why he put in a system without having anything into the county.
And when that happens, is there any recourse for the installer?
For the installer, well, the installer does have a bond that they need to put up with the state. And so if, the person hiring the contractor can certainly make claims against that bond. But that's not anything the county does. It would be something that the person hiring that.
And just a last question, has this ever happened before with this installer?
We've had this issue with putting the cart before the horse before. We've had no permits pulled, maybe a design, but no permit on file when he's calling for inspection. This is a pattern.
Okay, thank you.
Question for you, Amy. Is it common practice for contractors, whether it be septic systems or construction, to do the permitting and get that for the landowner?
Depends on the contractor. It really does. Some contractors will handle that start to finish. Some contractors will require the property owner to do all of it. Septic systems are a little bit different, so generally what happens when a septic system is designed, the designer submits that to the county because they know the county has to, in order for us to grant a permit, we must review that design and make sure that it's a design that can be installed. And so generally, when it comes to permitting, we already have the design on file, and then either the property owner or the contractor's getting the permit. In Mr. Altrichter's case, how he handles that is he handles all of it. He usually is submitting the design and pulling the permit, is how he generally handles his.
So that is a fairly common practice that.
Correct, yes.
Okay, and what part does the landowner have to take in that? Do they need to sign anything, or?
No, if it's a septic system, if they're designing on behalf of someone, we know who that's going to be. We make sure that the design matches who the property owner is, and if the installer is pulling that permit on behalf, we're aware of that because we've already had the design, and so we know that that's been hired. So sometimes the property owner, we may not even see the property owner with that, because that sometimes is generally completely handled by the contractor.
And all permitting, no matter what, is followed up by an inspection after it's done, correct?
Septic, yes, because we're required to inspect the installation and then issue a certificate of compliance saying, what we're saying is that the system was installed according to the design.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
And here, if I remember correctly, this is the type 3, this is probably
Yes.
towards Amy geared the question, is the type 3. And Mr. Altricher was explaining how we did this here, and I think what being it's near a wetland, I believe the type 3 is if we got a high water table, that is typically the type 3 system is put in. And can you give a quick explanation of how that is put in so there's not a possibility of leaching towards the wetland?
It's not surprising that it's a type 3, because when you look at, you have a lake on one side and wetland on the other, we know that seasonal high water table is going to be very high. A type 3 septic mound system is essentially all of the treatment is happening above ground. There is not adequate soil on the site to provide any treatment. So that's why you have the 3-foot sand lift on the ground surface, and that's where all of the treatment happens. So when the water hits the native soil or the soil, it's already treated. So that's really kind of what a type 3 mound is.
So that's, with that being said, is the perfect system for the type of,
It would be, the soils would be calling for a type 3 system, yes.
okay, thank you.
Just a clarification on that, Amy. Now, some installers consider a type 3 system to be experimental and subject to failure, but it is an accepted, permitted practice, correct?
So type 3 systems are handled differently depending on the property. On a newly created parcel, new split, you must show that you've got 2 spots for a type 1 system. On a piece of property that's already been developed and it's a replacement system, a type 3 is allowed, but it is still deviating from the standards, and the landowner must acknowledge that it is not a standard system, and there may be more care and more, I guess, care that in monitoring that needs to be done on that system. That doesn't go away. That goes with any type 3 system that's installed. But it is allowed by code, yes.
So that acknowledgement by the landowner might not happen in the permitting process if the contractor does it.
No, we require that form to be signed by, we don't
Okay.
consider the design complete unless we have that form also on file, acknowledged by the
Signed by
property
the
owner, yes.
All right. Thanks for clarifying that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Clint.
Okay, Lori, when we were out there for a site visit, we looked around and, probably the only place for this sewer to fit is where it is. Okay, so now it's too close to the wetland. When you were talking with Mr. Altrichter in the beginning, what other recommendations, did he give you any other recommendations on what else you can do other than what you have? I know there was some talk out there about putting something else in.
I could have replaced the holding tank with a smaller holding tank, but he knew that wouldn't allow me to make it a year-round dwelling. So that was the conversation we had, and I did sign, it must have been the design, but did he not submit that right away?
Mr. Chair, when he called for inspection, we did not have a design.
Okay, interesting.
A little clarification on that. Holding tanks can be year-round dwellings.
Yes, we will allow, especially with a small site like that, a designer can say, I'm designing a holding tank for this property because the site does not lend itself to accommodate a drain field, and we accept that. The difference is that there's pumping that has to happen, and so most property owners who are gonna live year-round wanna get out from underneath having to pump their tank, and so from a zoning standpoint, it's allowed. We will allow a year-round home to operate on a holding tank, but from a property owner standpoint, they may not want that.
Okay.
Just so the applicant knows
Yeah, I
that.
didn't, what I read, it wasn't, so that's good to know.
Okay, Mr. Chair, got
Yes,
one
go
more.
ahead, Clint.
Okay, so I guess this probably isn't a question, just a comment. Well, can you own the property next door too?
I
And
do.
that's got a drain field.
Yep.
And someday that probably not gonna be able to stay there someday. So if it does, hopefully you learn from this thing.
Oh, don't worry.
Take care of this
Yeah,
yourself.
Yeah.
So probably what would have happened here is if the design would have went in on time, the permits would have came in on time, they do a pre-inspection or whatever, and they would have to meet all them setbacks. It would not meet the setbacks, so you'd
Right.
have to come get a variance.
And I'd know that before he broke ground.
Yes, so then you come get a variance, now it's in, so we're doing after the
Right,
fact. So
right.
just for the future, if you have to do something else on that other house someday, maybe just watch it a little more on your own.
Oh, definitely. I've
Yeah.
learned a lot.
Because we get a lot, don't mean to pick on him, but we get a lot of Lake Home people that he does work for, that there's a lot of things, maybe not necessarily just with a sewer, but the contractor said it was okay. And it gets kind of frustrating
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's on the town board and should know some of these things, but,
I know. And I chose him, word of mouth, I heard from, and I looked him up. I wanted a certified designer. So, live and learn.
okay, so one thing, we talked, I know Marv, I think we all did talk to you, you said you were thinking about putting some bushes in between the road and the.
Yep.
So, I think
Yep.
one condition maybe, if we would pass this, that you would put something there.
Okay, definitely. I want the privacy, and
Yep.
there's always trees down there, so
Yep.
yeah.
And it'll be, I seen you had it seeded in the grass, it ain't growing yet, but of course it'd be
Yeah.
grass and bushes or something like that.
Yeah, when I heard about the variance issue, the only thing he had left to do was lay black dirt.
Yep.
And it was mid-September, so I had him just
Yep.
finish it, and, yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Amy.
I just want to make sure if you are going to be planting,
Make sure it's the right kind of trees and bushes.
well, also, when you're going to be planting close to that mound, that root action can undermine your drain field.
Yep.
So you need to be very thoughtful about the type of plants and the root system. Also, you need to be mindful that you're not planting those in the township road right of way.
Right,
So you may have so you'll have to know exactly where those can be, so you're not undermining your septic system function, and then also staying out of the road right of
Okay.
way.
Okay.
I think that would just help with, some of the water running across the road and stuff. It just helps
Oh, yeah.
absorb water and things like that, so.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're off the right of way with plantings, hopefully snow plowing won't
Right,
ruin what you've got too, so.
right.
All right, anybody else at this point? Okay, well, we'll ask for, go to the public input part of the hearing and call for any public input at this time. Is there any public input at this time? One more time, is there any public input? As there is none, we'll close the meeting to public input at this time and get on with our deciphering. I don't know if this is important or not, but I did look on Beacon today and looked at pictometry. And there is some imagery from April of several years, and there is seasonal flooding, you know. So on the lakeside of the road, that little bit of a ditch there does fill up. Even, yeah. Yeah. The lift in the road prevents that from running
Helps
over the
prevent it.
road, but, and in a sense treats it, you know, allows it to soak in slowly. So I don't know if anybody wants to see any of that imagery, how far that water goes. It looks like it goes up to about where the base of that type 3 system is.
It had never done that before.
Or
Right,
type 3 system
2019.
would be.
Yeah,
Again, we're looking at this too as not an after the fact necessarily, but as what would we have done if you would have come in here for a variance? Would we have permitted it? Would we have, how would we have conditioned it? How, you know, or would we have said, you know, no way, you can get by with a holding tank? That's really the question, holding tank, type 3 system. So, go ahead.
so theoretically, he had to take out a bond with the state?
As part of being a licensed septic
Oh, he
system.
has a bond, right?
He has to
okay.
put up a bond, that's a condition of his license.
Okay, all right,
So he doesn't put that up with the county, that's in order to be licensed by the state of Minnesota, he puts up a
Understood.
bond.
all right, thank you.
Yeah, I guess before we go on, one more question. So since separation takes place in that mound, standing water around the base of the mound is not an issue with a type 3 system?
It shouldn't, you know, that's taken into consideration, that, you know, the hydrology around the system, isn't as much of a factor as what's happening, you know, on top and through. One of the things that, really will mess with the hydrology of a system is if you've got deep-rooted plants in there, or say you are outletting your water softener water with a hose right on top, and you're adding all this extra water, and you're just you're just flooding the system with more water than what it's designed to do. That's where you're gonna have failure of the system or blow it out.
So not only is the treatment in the soil, in the mound, but there is evaporation too, isn't there?
There would be some, yeah.
I mean, some of the water goes that way.
Yeah.
Okay, Any more questions? Are we ready for the criteria questions?
Ready.
Okay, we'll go to the criteria questions. Do you have any input before we do that?
No.
Okay. All right. The first question is, the request in harmony with general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan. I think we'll start out with Clint tonight.
I believe it is. When you look at it, we allow a type 3 system in our ordinance for that type of soil. If we look at where this septic system is placed, everything about it is done properly except that don't meet the setback that we have in ordinance as far from a wetland. But other than that, I think the request is in harmony with the purposes and intent of the land use ordinance and a comprehensive plan. It's done properly. It allows for it, other than just that setback. And I think maybe the road and stuff would maybe, the way that's been redone and the flooding, that probably mitigates me really thinking terrible about that setback.
Another question for Amy. At the DRT meeting, Mr. Anderson was there, the hydrologist. I don't see anything in the notes. Did he express any concerns?
Mr. Chair, not that I recall. I think.
I think it'd be in the notes.
And wetlands really are under Wetland Conservation Act, which is under Soil and Water Conservation District.
And Shannon was there also.
Correct. The mound does meet setback from the lake, and so that would be probably where you'd get more comment from the DNR than wetland. But yes, I believe both were present and had discussion.
And they had discussion in the minutes and seemed to
Yes.
be more concerned with the process rather than,
Correct. I think frustration with the contractor.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, also, this is a non-conforming property. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least review a little bit about what
What does that
a
mean?
non-conforming property is. A conforming property in Lakeshore is 30,000 square feet and has 120 feet of shoreline. You have 100 feet of shoreline and 15,432 square feet, so about half a property and 20 feet short of a full load, full shoreline.
Yeah.
But still, 100 feet is better than a lot of properties have. When it was referred to earlier, how much can you fit on a small property? Drain fields and systems like this just don't fit. There's
Mr. Chair?
no place.
I just have a quick question. I'm sorry. Are you answering criteria question number 1, or are you
Yes.
having discussion? Okay, I just wanted to
All
make
the
sure
above.
if you're building findings right now, or, okay.
Well, and as a new property owner too, most lakeshore owners don't know what
Yeah.
they're up against. So part of me wants to say, yep, it's an accepted design, the wetland is protected, but this is such a small property, it's really, holding tank is about what it's meant for. And it was, when these properties were designed, they were seasonal properties, and now they're becoming year-round properties. Hard to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. So, is it in harmony with intent and purposes of the ordinance and comprehensive plan? Not really. I mean, just because of its size, and there's no room for the system. By allowing this, we're creating another nonconformity. You have a nonconforming residence, you have a nonconforming deck, boathouses, size of the property, adding one more nonconformity. And we're tasked with reducing nonconformities rather than creating nonconformities. So, is it in harmony with intent and purpose? Not really. Anybody else on question number 1?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Brent.
I would just add on to question number 1, people are people are using their properties, and they are allowed to have a sewer for their residence or their cabin. And in that light, this property was trying to upgrade a leaking, damaged tank in the ground and improve. And I think that is in the general purpose of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan, trying to make things better, trying to address water issues. I think that's what was being accomplished here. And it is a tier 3 in a confined area, so most of that filtration is going to occur above the water table before it enters in. So I think all of those things are kind of in line with the comprehensive plan of the county.
Okay. I guess I'd like to add that type 3s are permitted over the counter regularly if they meet setbacks. Anybody else on question number 1? Okay, off to question number 2. We're going to start with Marv on this one. Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by land use ordinance? Marv?
I think they are, and the reason why is, as we learned about type 3 systems, it would be the type of system that would be put in there. As Brent mentioned earlier, they had a damaged tank that probably came from when they put in fiber optic in there, and he wanted to upgrade it. They also, or she also explained that she was trying to turn in from tanks to living a seasonal cabin to a year-round cabin. And tanks will work without a question. But the trouble is when you have tanks, the volume they can hold. And then the problem then is they're going to be pumped frequently. You're on a road that's traveled a fair amount back there, and you got a big system, and it's going to be traveled more. And what is the less of the two evils? The less of the two evils, and the best for that piece of property is to probably put in a type 3 system. And where it was put is you're 51 feet from the well, you're 62 feet from the water issue of that they don't meet the setback of, I'm trying to think of wetland, thank you very much. And with that being said, the road, you have a good solid base on the road. Yeah, and basically, Mr. Alter said there's a road on top of a road plus a base. So the possibilities of anything leaching through that system to the wetland is probably not going to happen. So with that being, making this into a long story, it makes the most amount of sense what Lori did and what Alter designed for this piece of property.
Okay, thank you, Marv. Any addition to question number 2? Okay. Now on to number 3. Brent, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality?
Driving in there on Friday, taking a look at the other cabins as you approach, they all have some sort of a mound system on their backlots between the cabin and the road. This seems to be the general character of this area where all of the sewers are designed and placed. Where this one is being proposed, I would suspect that maybe some of the others along that same area aren't quite 75 feet either. So it is consistent with what's all along that drive.
Okay, thank you. Any other input? Go ahead, Marv.
With the condition that Clint recommended that we put some shrubs there, it will help blend it into that neighborhood also.
Yep, I agree that right now it's a pretty
Pretty stark.
That'll buffer the impact of that and maintain the essential character of the neighborhood. Okay, and anything else on number 3? Off to number 4. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? That's mine. I'd like to add that the applicant did a very good job of answering the criteria questions, and we could, for the most part, use the reasons, the answer she gave. You know, it's reasonable to, even if it's not in harmony with the general purposes intent of the comprehensive plan and the ordinance, it's a reasonable request, because who wouldn't want a type 3 system versus, and they are accepted, can maintain the essential character. And the reason we're here is because of the design of the property. There's no room for anything. So did the applicant create their own practical difficulty with the request, or does the design and the small building envelopes, the small envelopes that anything can fit in, is that the practical difficulty? That's the question. It's got to be unique to the property, not unique to the landowner.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I would just kind of echo what she wrote down for a practical difficulty. Yes, as I understand it, the location is the only place the mound can be placed due to the width and depth of my property and the distance from my well. And when we were out there on Friday, I would kind of agree that it is non-conforming property, but just the way it's designed and where you definitely makes more sense to put it where it does than if it was on the other side of that hill and by the lakeside. Yeah. Definitely that would probably not be a good thing. We probably would make you tear it out, So I think that the practical difficulty here is that there is nowhere else to put it. Is there some other options possibly? But to go along with just everybody else down that whole lake, down that road, the majority are septic systems. I don't know what the number of tanks are or whatever that are on them lakes, but majority, so to stay in the majority, and it hits with the essential character of the neighborhood, the only place to put that mound is where it is. So I think the practical difficulty is just with that hill and the lake, that too close to the neighbors, the well, all that. I think that's where the practical difficulty lies here.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair?
thank you, Clint. Go ahead, Mark.
As Clint pointed out earlier about the lay of the piece of property, another thing that wasn't discussed is how the property lines are so diagonal in the neighbor's mound system. You would think would be right in line where this one should be placed, but because of the property lines being diagonal, creates part of this practical difficulty also.
Thank you, Marv. So, anybody else on number 4? Number 5, well, Clint, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners?
Part of it is, we can look, like I said, on the previous question, is just with the lot being small, with the topograph of the lot, with the hill in there between the lake and the road, that well being where it is, we could say, yeah, previous landowner put a well there. But if that's the only place you could get water, that's really not a factor of the previous landowner either. Side property lines, just all the different things that go in, there's a lot more factors than just the homeowner wanting a new sewer. So I do think that the practical difficulty arises, more of it is not because of the landowner or the prior landowner. It's just too many, there's so many variables on this lot. Like Dave said, it's a non-conforming lot. It's small, but I still think we want to have sewer systems on these lots and take care of our environment. So I do think the creation of this is just all them setbacks, where the well is, where the house is. Some of them things are from the landowner and prior landowner, but not all of it. So I would probably answer yes to 5.
Okay, anybody want to add to that? You know, as I think about this and where we've been before with other landowners and where we will be, you know, there's an unlimited demand for lakeshore and a limited amount of lakeshore.
Sure.
And along with all that demand comes changing uses. As the applicant is stating, you know, from seasonal to year-round. And we come across this quite often. So is the need for the variance created other than the action of all landowners? Change in demographics, change in population, change in, you know, how much money people have today versus when that lot was created. So I'd say yes, there are other factors involved other than just, you know, the actions of the landowner. Anybody else on number 5? Okay, number 6, Marvin, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations?
I believe so, and a few things I'm going to point out is, before Lori went ahead, or the landowner ended up hiring Altricher, she did what she thought was due diligence and checked out his background, and it sounded like he had pretty good rapport. And as Amy stated earlier, he is a one-stop shop where he takes care of mostly everything, and she assumed things were done that way. Also, it would be cheaper to put in holding tanks than put it in the full system. So that, if you look at it that way, and then her history, she works for Bay West. In my previous job, I worked for Minnesota Power, and Minnesota Power used to hire Bay West to do all their cleanups of oil spills, and so she sounds like she tries to do her due diligence, and she's thinking about things more than just this is what I want done, and this is what, the way it's going to be done. So I think there was more than just economic considerations, and then also wanting to turn in a seasonal to a year-round cabin.
Okay, thank you, Marv. Anybody else on number 6? Are we ready to vote on the questions? Okay, let's proceed with the vote. Is the request is the request in harmony with the general purposes intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Marvin?
Yes.
Number 4, is alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Clint?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Number 6, does alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic consideration? Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and then after the fact, we have a second set of questions to consider before we go to the vote or go make a motion,
Mr.
correct?
Chair? Yeah, so these are discretionary, so this would be the time where you would have a discussion on whether or not you want to apply the after-the-fact criteria or not. So that would be your discussion, and then decide which, if you want to apply them or not.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead,
I'd
Clint.
make the motion that we don't do the after the fact. Looking through them, I just don't know what else that would.
Well, I'd like to do that too, but I think, you know, the contractor maybe needs to hear our answers more than the applicant does. And I don't know if that's any rational thinking or not.
Mr. Chair, the after-the-fact criteria questions are really weighing and balancing. That's, and like I've said this before, and Matt has said this before, is you're weighing, was this misconduct or was this a mistake? And I think you know, depends on who you're talking about. Are you talking about the actions of the property owner, or are you talking about the actions of her contractor? And so I guess that's really what this one boils down to, because I think if you were centering the answers based on the contractor, you might come up with a different answer than if you were talking about her. And I think that's really, that will form the way you need to vote then. So I think there's other ways to communicate with the contractor regarding this, but, and I understand that, but I think it depends on what your intention is.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. The reason why I made that motion is because I believe she made a mistake twice. Once is not doing it herself, getting the permits and realizing that it was too close. And two, the contractor she hired, so, that's why I made the motion, that I don't think digging through these is gonna change anything for us, right? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Marv.
Here, I think we know Altucher as the contractor does good work, but we have had a history with him putting the cart in front of the horse a few times. And it is kind of frustrating that way. I don't know if it would do any good, but I mean, I think he needs to be told that, hey, you have to look at things a little more so than just doing it. I know he kind of rushes things at times too, but it's kind of frustrating that way. But I think everything we're hearing from her, she tried to do her due diligence, and she made that mistake.
You know, thank you, Marv, and Clint. I think we could answer these questions honestly, but still, when we get to the decision part, we could answer that honestly too. Has the applicant showed a practical difficulty? I don't know that the two have to be the same,
Mr. Chair?
in my mind. Go ahead, guys, I don't know what you think.
Mr. Chair, we just went through the after-the-fact variance request as we would have done a variance request to begin with, and those were answered in the affirmative by the majority of us. I don't know that we would need to go through these questions at this time.
But this is when we, as a little bit of a rebuttal, this is when we review the after-the-fact nature of it and why the applicant had to pay a higher fee for this. The applicant has been through some things we hope don't happen again.
Yes, the applicant has learned her lesson, a couple of different lessons.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think you've actually put on the record already your thoughts.
Yep.
And your separation, the separation you have between the applicant and the contractor, and your kind of thoughts about why we're here on both. I don't know that you need to formally go through these questions to get, because I think you've already had that discussion. I think every one of you has addressed it in some way.
I think we probably would agree that the contractor would probably fail these 8 questions.
Yes.
And it might be good to have that on the record.
He failed all 8 questions. My motion is that we don't do the after-the-fact questions.
Okay? Everybody's okay with that. We don't need a second. We're good to go. Okay? Is there a motion, pardon me?
Can I get that for the record, though? Because right now I have a motion from Clint to not do the questions.
It wasn't seconded.
That's what I'm asking for. Can I
It
get?
wasn't seconded.
Okay.
So we don't need a second. We just let it die. We don't need it. We're all in agreement. We'll go to the,
It's a motion, so I do need it.
not if nobody seconds it. Just dies.
Either rescind your motion or someone second it and vote and go.
Okay, I'll second it. All in favor? Or any discussion on Clint's motion to not address the variance questions?
Aye.
No discussion? Any discussion? Okay, no discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we'll proceed to the criteria questions.
Mr.
No,
Chair.
we've already done that. We need a motion now to accept, to grant this.
I'd like to make a
variance.
motion that we grant this variance with the condition.
Okay, I'll second that. Is there any discussion on that motion? No discussion? Proceed to vote. I'll take a roll call vote on that. In favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Marvin?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Myself is aye. Clint?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Your variance, after the fact, variance has been, I think granted is the term.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep.
I appreciate it. And I'll be calling Land Services because I want to put in a garage, so I'll be in touch.
Non-conforming, make it your second.
I know.
Okay, thank you. Old business, minutes of the previous minute. The minutes have been corrected to show a change in the vote on the Milky matter. So, any other changes to the minutes? Okay. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented,
I'd make that
as
motion.
corrected?
I'd
Okay,
make that motion.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, minutes accepted as corrected. New business?
Mr. Chair, I don't think I've got any new business for Board of Adjustment.
Okay. Old business?
I don't think I have any of that either.
Monkey business?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion is made,
I'll second that.
seconded by Marv. All in favor, say aye.
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 Marv,
Said aye.
are you sure you said aye? Adjourned at 6:52.